Olá, olá, BPM Friends! O vídeo de hoje é super especial, uma coisa inédita que a gente nunca fez aqui no canal. Nas minhas andanças por aí, eu descobri o escritório de processos da Universidade de Berkeley, nos Estados Unidos. Uma super universidade, uma das 10 maiores do mundo. Eu entrei em contato com eles e tive uma primeira conversa com Michael Cook, que é o líder do escritório de processos de lá. E hoje ele aceitou participar desse vídeo comigo, concedendo uma super entrevista aqui para todos nós de BPM Friends, contando um pouquinho da história e da experiência deles nesse escritório de processos internacional. Então, o vídeo de hoje é uma entrevista em inglês, mas tem legenda aqui embaixo para você ativar e acompanhar tudo direitinho. E a gente vai ter a chance de conhecer como é que funciona um escritório de processos topo de linha lá nos Estados Unidos. Vem comigo para esse papo delicioso com o meu novo amigo Mike Cook. Hi Mike, I'd like to begin by thank you for accepting the invitation to participate in this video. I truly believe will be a unique opportunity for our BPMN friends to learn a little bit about the reality of an international business process office. And it's not any process office, it's the BPM office of Berkeley, one of the 10 best universities in the world. So thank you very much once again for your time and attention. I hope we both can enjoy this conversation, and I'm grateful to learn from you and your team. I have to say that I'm very curious about Berkeley's BPM office and that I have a lot of questions for you. Are you prepared?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. Mike, so please tell me a little bit about your career and how you came to be Berkeley's process office leader.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, yeah, I've been at Berkeley for almost 6 years now. So I think March will be 6 years, and before that, I was in the biotech industry for a long time, about 16 years. And prior to that, I was in the military. And in the military, my job was in logistics and supply chain. And I really got into, obviously, just a lot of process there, a lot of checklists. And then the biotech industry was a lot of supply chain, manufacturing, and project management.
And how did you start in Berkeley's University as a process office leader?
Sure, I actually started at UC Berkeley as a change manager, actually. So there was a 1-year contract position. I was hired on as a change manager. There was a big reorganization happening and also implementing a new HR system. And so I was brought in as a change manager, and that just sort of morphed into what we now know as the business process management office. I was lucky that there was really support from the administration leadership, and they had a vision of having a team like this that could do process improvement type of work. Right, that was initial discussions of when the team was formed, and since then we've morphed into much more, as you know.
Mike, now I would like to know the history of the Business Process Management Office in Berkeley. How long
Mhm.
ago it was created? How many people do you have in your team now? How is this organization?
Sure. So there, including myself, there's 7 of us, and there's a mix of folks that are project managers and then business analysts or process professionals. And over the years, they've both learned how to do project management, and the project managers are learning about process. So there's a lot of cross training across the board on the team as well. And really, our initial focus when we first started was around process improvement specifically. There was a lot of desire and appetite for process improvement across the campus, specifically in the administration side, right? And then myself and a few others on the team, we had an audacious vision of someday documenting every process on campus, right? Which sounds crazy, and that still is our big dream to have everything documented and build the what we call the process model house for UC Berkeley, seeing everything as an end to end, like human resources hired to retire, for example, or procure to supply, right? So that's the dream, to eventually have that. We started off really strong, just focusing on just documenting processes, right? And there were a couple of projects that were falling into our lap at that time as well. But our initial focus was really building the process architecture, really trying to drive end-to-end process thinking, around campus. And you have to remember also, our initial focus was on the administration side of the campus. So we really weren't doing much on the academic side, with the exception of like student employee type of hiring processes, looking at those, trying to improve those types of processes. And what we found was that although we had some initial success with documenting a lot of processes, and the process people will know what I mean by this, and this isn't when I say low maturity, doesn't, we're not talking, we're not talking bad here. We're talking about process maturity level at that time on campus was fairly low, right? So there really wasn't a good understanding of what is the value of having a process architecture, what is the value of documenting all these processes, right? So although we had some initial success, we started kind of slowing down, and a lot of the asks that were being requested of us were more project type of work, right? Project management type of work, right? Because there's a lot of, there's a lot of firefighting, a lot of things that just need to get done right away. And so we're starting to be asked to do more project work, not necessarily process work, although we started embedding the process into the project work, which I'll explain here in a second. So we started shifting a little bit and saying, hey, you know what, we need to really show that we can add value here, right? And so let's get good at project management, portfolio management, and figure out how we can embed process work into that, right? So with every project, we make sure that we document the current state, right? Because as you know, a lot of people might say, hey, we need to improve our processes. Well, the first thing you need to do is understand what you do today. What's your current state before you can start looking at making improvements, or even automating, which is a whole nother conversation, right? First thing you need to know is what do you do today, and is that a good process or not, right? So that's what we started to do. We started to really streamline and standardize our own internal BPM processes as far as how to manage projects, and embed process, documenting process with these projects, and then also embedding change management throughout that as well, right? And then we started getting into strategic planning and making sure that not just my team had a strategic plan, but the administration had a strategic plan as well, which is what I think separates us from like a normal like project management office or a traditional BPM office. Is we try to ensure that all these things are aligned.
You are talking about a lot of interesting topics, because here in Brazil, our business process management offices also talk about change management, process architecture, strategic planning, and things like that. But when you say that the big dream is to document process in all the campus, it's kind of a polemic here in Brazil, right? Because, should I dream with documenting the current process model of all of my organization now, or should I take one process and try to improve this one, automate this one, and then I go to the second, to the third one, and things like that. What do you think about it?
No, you're absolutely right. Especially if you have, depending on the size of your team, right? If you had thousands of people, then sure you could just spread out and start documenting everything, right? But that's not reality. There's 7 of us. I'm not sure how big your team is, right? So, and most BPM teams across, most organizations are fairly small, right? And so what we do is we don't necessarily document everything all at once. What we do is there's a project right now where we're basically creating an inventory of the processes, right? We identify what the end to end is, right? What those pillars are, right? And if we use, hire to retire as an example, right? You acquire, you manage, you train, et cetera, right? So within each one of those pillars, there's sets of processes, right? Like your L2 processes, right? And so just doing an initial inventory of identifying what processes are out there and then prioritizing, then trying to understand, okay, well, doing some interviews or surveys or, it's anecdotal history of where are the pain points or where do we think the pain points are, and then prioritizing those, documenting those processes first, right? So that's usually that's our approach now.
Perfect. It's perfect. Mike, I have a curiosity because Berkeley is a huge and public university, right? But why a university in the United States decided to invest in a business process office? Because it's not very common, right? I believe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, I think there are. I mean, to your point, we've talked offline before. It's really hard to find good examples of similar types of offices, right? You can find maybe some project management offices, maybe some strategic planning offices, but a BPM office that's trying to do what the BPM offices in Brazil are trying to do and we're trying to do, kind of combine all these things together. It's really hard to find. And there are other universities around the United States, even within the University of California system, that have similar types of offices, like transformational type of offices, right? And I'm sure that they're all doing really great work. And some of them might sit in different areas of the university, like in IT, for example. Maybe they might sit in HR. So they're very focused on those specific types of areas. Where I think where I got lucky with the leadership in administration in Berkeley was their support and that they recognize the need to have this type of office more centrally located, right? So I'm part of the administration area, but we sit in the central office. That way we can cover, our scope is much bigger and broader. We actually help manage projects outside of administration now as well. So to answer your question, I think there are similar types of offices. Even at Berkeley, before in my time, there was an operational excellence team at one time, a few years ago. This was before my time. They did some really great things. They integrated the timekeeping system. They did some other great things, and I'm not sure why they, they're no longer with us, but they came and they did some great things. And then even when I came on board within Campus Shared Services, which no longer exists, there was a process transformation and innovation team, and actually some of those members that are left are on my team now, right? So that team was very focused on uh, their scope was very focused on like HR and research administration, transactional types of processes, right? So I think universities and even Berkeley have tried before in different ways. I'm just really fortunate that we've been given an opportunity over the last almost 5 years to try a slightly different approach. This time combining project, process, change management, and strategic planning all together.
Mike, let's talk a little bit about the operation. How is your daily routine in Berkeley? What are the main activities in which you invest your time in business process office as a leader?
Yeah, great question. Every day is slightly different, but as I'm sure I'm really fortunate. I have a really great team, a really great high performing team, and everyone does, knows what to do. There's, the BPM office we spent a lot of time really refining our own infrastructure. It's almost, it's not the best analogy, but it's almost in some ways we were building the plane as we're taking off in some ways, right? And when the team was first developed, we wanted to document processes, but the campus needed project support. So we're trying to adjust and say, okay, we don't want to lose the process part, but we need to show that we can add value by being good project managers and managing portfolio, embedding process in it, right? And then the pandemic happened, and having documented processes was even more important, right? And then people realize like, oh, how do you do this? Where can we find this process, right? So the value of having processes documented became even more apparent during the pandemic. But to answer your question, a lot of my work now, my own work, is managing the background, managing the portfolio of all of our projects, making sure that the websites are updated, making sure that we're following our 5-year, 10-year roadmap, our strategic plan, goals, right? So it's a lot of work. It's easy to sit here as a BPM professional and say, oh, you should have a strategic plan, and that should be aligned to the goals, and the strategic plan should drive your portfolio and your projects and process. It's easy to say all those things, right? But actually to put it into practice and to manage that and be transparent and publish it, it's a lot of work in the background. So we spent probably the last year and a half really refining and trying to make it as easy as possible. So to answer it's a long-winded answer, but I spend a lot of time doing things in the background so my team can effectively do their job.
Perfect. Yeah, I believe that's the main work of a leader, right? So it's perfect. But Mike, now let's take a look at the other side of the coin. What are the main difficult challenges faced by a business process management office?
That's a great question, and I'm sure we could probably have a panel and have everyone would probably have similar issues. Some of the ones that we deal with and we continue to deal with is not so much on the project management side of the house. I think everyone recognizes the importance and the value of having good project management, getting things done, showing, and how that adds value. And then there's one side of the coin where people really recognize the value and importance of documenting processes, right? We have a process champion network that we put together, right? And we have about a little over 1,500 processes that have been documented, and we track the number of views that our process gets, which is, yearly averages, between 10 and 12,000 views. But one of the challenges is continuing to document for more processes. Back to the initial vision of having everything documented, I think one of the biggest challenges is having people understand the value and importance of documenting processes and how that can help change the university or whatever organization that you're in, right? Getting outside the mindset of firefighting, making knee-jerk reactions, but becoming more of a data-oriented decision-making organization where you're making decisions based on your strategic plan, based on data from that you get from your process. This process is being documented, right? But there's a lot of work, as you and your followers know, to get to that point. To get to that point, you need to document your processes. You need to analyze your processes. How long do things take? Where are the pains and waste in these processes? And getting into that PDCA cycle of continuous improvement. That's the challenge, is getting the mindset change in an organization to really own it and really want to document processes and really live and breathe process.
So at the end of the day, it's all about culture and people, right? It's the
That's
main,
right.
Okay. The main difficulty. Oh, okay. So we are not alone here in Brazil. We have the same difficulty.
No,
so,
I mean, you all are probably hearing the same thing, right? There's a lot of talk about, and when I say there's a lot of talk, I'm not talking about just just at UC Berkeley, but in general, and other organizations I've been in as well, or that I've helped, consult with, oh, we want to automate everything. We want to do this. We want to automate that. It's like, okay, are you documenting your processes? And it's usually crickets after that, right? So it's important to drive the value and importance of knowing what you do today, right? Everyone wants to, there's always room for improvement, and processes can be improved, but the ideal future state, again, is understanding what your end-to-end is, knowing what processes are there, knowing if someone asks you, hey, what's the health of your organization? How do you answer that question? Being able to effectively answer that question, not just with how your gut feels, but with data.
Mike, I have already browsed your website several times. It was my first point of contact with you.
Mhm.
And I also shared it with my students here in Brazil during my BPM office trainings. I really loved your website because it's very, very difficult to find public information about business process management offices. And I have seen that the website has been increased over and over times. And
Mhm.
how did you arrive at this decision to share the data publicly in the internet? Didn't you have any confidentiality issues for that? What are the future plans for this website? Should we use it as a source of information for us here in Brazil? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll answer the last part first. Yeah, definitely continue visiting the website because we have a lot of things coming. Always new things coming, and I'll tell you about the things that are going to be launched here in the next couple of months in a second. But to answer the first part of your question, well, first of all, Berkeley is a public university, right? So everything is, publicly available, right? Either on the website or via, people can request information to see. Now, are there confidential things that we can't share? Of course, right? We can't share people's personal information and student IDs or employee IDs, right? And we don't deal with that type of information, right? So, but if we did, then obviously we wouldn't, make that public. However, we definitely not just because we're a public university, but my team and I, it was a very conscious effort that we wanted to, and we were all very clear with each other that we wanted to be as transparent as possible with everything that we're doing. Exactly to your point, right? Because all of us have different levels of experience, and I'll talk about that and how that's benefited us in a second. But and one of the things that we all recognized was that it is hard to get information as far as what we're trying to do out there, right? There's a lot of people talking about it, a lot of a lot of PowerPoints and a lot of talks, but we it was hard for us to find examples, right? And we wanted to be transparent to show, hey, not only are we talking the talk, but we're walking the walk here as well, right? If we want to tell our clients and partners that it's important to document processes, then we should document our processes and make them available, right? If we want people to show statuses of projects, we should publish those things as well, right? So it's really important to be as transparent as possible. Now there are some projects that move really fast, and the project updates are weekly, and we publish those offline, but they could be available if someone asks. But we publish status reports and strategic planning and process metrics every couple of weeks as consistently as possible. It's important for everyone to know what's going on, what's the status of projects, if there's a risk to the timeline, what's the mitigation plan, what's the communication plan. It's really important to us to be as transparent as possible. Actually, even on our website, there's a whole spot called Respectfully Illuminate. I don't know if you saw that on the webpage. And it's just a quick little write-up on our philosophy of being transparent. Even when you're going into a process session, right? One of the things that organizations that don't have a whole lot of experience with getting people in the room talking about process, it's easier for people to get offended, because it's nothing personal, right? But sometimes as a facilitator of a process session, you have to keep in mind that the person who initially developed this process that you're going to go in to improve might be in the room, and they might have spent a lot of time putting that process together, right? And maybe it worked great in the past, but now for some reason times have changed, new technology, whatever. For whatever reason, the process now has some pain and waste and just not working that well, right? So instead of going into the room saying, hey, this process is no good, it's not working well, this is dumb or whatever, all that's going to do is make people feel upset and personally attacked, right? So instead, just respectfully illuminate, say, we're not here to point fingers or place blame. We're just saying, hey, this process was great at one point, now it's not working. Let's work together to understand what we all do and what we can do together to make the process better for the organization.
Yeah, very kind, very kind. Mike, since we started to talk about the website, I believe that most of our BPM friends will be curious about technology. What tools do you use in your business process management office today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really it's really basic. We're UC Berkeley is on the Google suite of tools. So we have, you know, Google Mail and Google Docs. And so a lot of the background work is done in Google and Google Sheets. And we've been transitioning more and more to Smartsheet. I don't know if you know what Smartsheet is, but Smartsheet is an online like project management tool, and it's really good for dashboards and whatnot. So that's really what we're using to manage our portfolio of projects is in our project plans is
Okay.
Smartsheet.
Okay.
And then we use it used to be called ProMap. It's called Process Manager now. That's from a company called Nintex, and they're in New Zealand, and that's what we use for documenting our processes. And Process Manager is also an online process mapping tool, which is really great because that's what we're using to create our central repository of processes. And it's easy to share that as well. And all the graphs that you see on the website, that's from a company called Everviz. They're in Norway. It's a really, I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't get paid by these companies. But Everviz is one of my favorite companies to work for. They're in Norway, and they're extremely supportive, a great team. And what's great about them is that they really focus on accessibility, right? And so those graphs are easily for you know, for web accessibility purposes. It's really great. They're interactive, and they basically read information from a Google sheet and they make interactive charts. And so those are really the main tools we use: the Smartsheet, Google Sheets, and Process Manager and Everviz.
And how about process automation? Tools like RPA, AI, BPMS. Did you use this kinds of stuff in your Berkeley Business Process Management Office? We suppose that a BPM office in Berkeley would be very intensive in technologies? Is that right or not? Is not the vision?
Yeah, of course, that's the part of the ultimate vision, right? Is to get to automation. There is a small team that's in part of people and culture here in the HR side of the house, and they do some automation. And there are a few things that are automated. We've helped support them to make sure that the processes that they want to automate are documented in Process Manager, right? So that's been our involvement to date. Again, you know, on that side of the house, I don't want to speak too much for them. It's the same sort of challenges that we have, really recognizing the value. Everyone wants to automate things, and I think it could add value, but it's important to understand what your current state is, document it, work out the pain and waste, and then automate, right? So having that change in behavior in an organization is really important. So then we can really fully adopt automation. So yes, at some point we would like to automate as well as start, you know, process mining, you know, using AI to process mine. I met with recently with someone from Australia National University, and he was telling me about how they're going to start using AI embedded process data mining to pull out metrics from data, which is great once you have your processes documented, right? So all those things is part of things that could potentially we can start doing. You could start seeing us do in the next very near future.
Okay, perfect. Mike, we are arriving at the end of our time together. So before we finish it, any final suggestion or idea for process offices here in Brazil? Or is there any content like books, films, videos that you want to share with our BPM friends?
Sure. I mean, you know, what's interesting is, you know, when you and I first met, you shared with me, and I appreciate you translating your framework, you know, for me into English, and that's great. It's great that you're providing that type of tool um, to the folks in Brazil that want to set up an office. I think it's good for it's a good framework for them to be able to follow. And my advice would be to, especially for a new office in an organization that is willing to invest in the BPM office, but they might not fully understand what it means yet, is to not worry about taking on everything at once. And that was an important lesson that we learned early on as well, right? Because there's lots of things that need to happen that can happen in parallel. Make sure that the organization that you're working for has a good strategic plan, and help them do it. Help them have an actionable strategic plan. Have a good portfolio of projects. Be good at the basics. Document at least current state, right? Don't worry so much about. I don't want to come across this. I'm not saying process improvement isn't important, but you'll get there, right? Just focus on having a strategic plan, portfolio management, project management, at least at a minimum, documenting current state, bringing it all together, and then you can focus on really diving into continuous improvement, right? Unless the organization is mature enough and ready. And as far as resources, I mean, of course, the BPMO website, right? So visit our website, and see what's new. But two books that I always come back to. One is it's an older book by Dr. Michael Hammer. Dr. Michael Hammer did reinventing the corporation, reengineering the corporation. It's really good. He was the father of business process reengineering. So it's a great read. And obviously we don't do everything that BPR suggests, but a lot of the things that he says is relevant regardless of the organization. When he talks about breaking down the silos and thinking end to end and changing the behavior in an organization is really great. And then another thing too that I really love, and I always go back to it, I have it sitting right here next to me, is Oliver White's Class A guide to Class A checklist. If you're not familiar with that, I'll send you the link. And it's very specific to manufacturing and supply chain organizations. However, regardless of the organization that you're in, you can read it and get ideas of how to make your organization better, more streamlined. And it really helps you think about how to measure the effectiveness of your process in your organization, which is really great.
Well, I'm familiar with the BPR book about Michael Hammer, but the second checklist I'm not. So please send this link for me. I would like to know it. I also, for sure, please. And Mike, once again, I'd like to thank you very, very much for your kindness, your openness. Since our first contact, it's not our first meeting together. Mm-hmm. I hope that we can have another meetings as soon as possible. So it's very, very pleasure to have you here in our YouTube channel. And thank you once again very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a pleasure talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Então, BPM Friends, o que vocês acharam do papo com o Mike? Essa é a segunda vez que eu me reúno com ele, na verdade. A gente já tinha feito uma conversa anterior quando nós nos conhecemos e eu pedi para saber um pouco mais sobre a experiência de Berkeley antes de convidá-lo para gravar esse vídeo comigo. E o que mais me chama a atenção toda vez que eu converso com o Mike é que me dá aquela sensação, não sei se você ficou com a mesma sensação, que é igualzinho o que nós passamos nas nossas próprias empresas. Vocês perceberam isso também? Então ele fala de gestão da mudança, ele fala de ter que fazer o as-is antes de pensar no to be, não tem um monte de aparato tecnológico, não tem um monte de ferramenta complicada, não estão pegando pesado com a automação de processos, certo? Então eles estão ali com uma abordagem de escritório de processos bastante pé no chão, bastante vida real, bastante gente como a gente. No finalzinho do vídeo ele comenta sobre um framework de escritório de processos que eu compartilhei com ele em inglês. É o framework de escritório de processos que a gente construiu aqui na DECA e que a gente usa no nosso curso de escritório de processos e nas nossas mentorias e consultorias de escritórios de processos. Bom, aqui embaixo na descrição desse vídeo eu vou deixar os links para vocês, tanto do site do Escritório de Processos de Berkeley, para vocês irem lá fuçar todas as informações que eles disponibilizaram, quanto também dos livros e dicas que ele deu no final de materiais. E fica de olho que quarta-feira que vem, às 19 horas, a gente está de volta com mais um vídeo bacana da área de BPM para você. Até lá!